5,000-year-old Inuit survival tech outperforms modern equipment by 86%. Each year, 3,428 people die from hypothermia despite carrying $3,000 survival kits that can't match what Inuit crafted from seal intestine. Stick around for the final technique. It might save your life when winter strikes and technology fails. There's no part of the world where food preservation isn't a big deal, but it is on a different level for the Inuit, and this is why. First, plants are extremely scarce here. The Inuit people have no choice but to depend on meat. And you know what it means to depend on meat. You have to hunt. Now this is where it gets interesting. In a place as dangerous as the Arctic, you want to make sure you spend most of your time indoors. You don't just take useless strolls, even if it's for a good reason like hunting. But when you do go out to hunt, you make sure your catch is worth it and can preserve you and your family for days, weeks in fact. Now this is where preservation comes in. There was no refrigerator, but the Inuit came up with different ways to not only keep food edible for as long as possible, but also preserve the nutrients. They realized that different nutrients are obtained from different parts of these animals, which means they can't be preserved in the same way. While some nutrients fade away after being boiled, some say only when dried up. For example, some parts of the animals are cut into strips and left outside to dry, forming something like meat jerky. The end product may be a full meal, but they do make great energy-giving snacks. For birds, they take a more interesting approach. In their numbers, they store them whole in pouches and leave them to ferment. This doesn't look or smell good in any way, but you have to understand that it didn't matter to the Inuit. What they cared about was consuming as many nutrients as possible. And if preserving birds like that was what was best, they didn't think twice. They figured it would be best if some parts of seals, walrus, whales, caribou, or polar bears were boiled, while at other times, they'd bury them to ferment. Even before scientists became this smart and inquisitive, these guys knew how to detect the nutrients in different parts of the animals and came up with the best way to preserve them, even without refrigerators. And the thing is, it's not always about preserving the nutrients, but keeping it safe from wild animals. They came up with a system called caching. This basically meant burying food in snow or ice-covered pits and marking it with snow mounds or rocks. They sometimes go ahead to cover these caches with stones just to prevent scavengers from sniffing them out. Anyway, around here, where plants almost don't exist and hunting is expensive, preservation can't be overemphasized. But luckily, the Inuit figured this out early. The Inuit have been using nature as their refrigerator way before modern scientists dreamt of inventing a freezer. But knowing how to preserve food will do very little to keep you alive if you're always outdoors. In the freezing Arctic, being stuck in the open is probably the fastest way to lose your life, and this leads us to another trick in the Inuit survival manual. Shelter for the Inuit wasn't just a place to get cozy at night or a place that could save them from wild animals. It was a strategic move to survive by trapping heat in a very unique way. When others were building houses of mud or leaves, the Inuit made theirs purely out of snow. Things we get rid of, the Inuit make their shelter, and there's science behind it. Now this is it. You first need to understand that the Inuit had no choice. They didn't have clay, trees to get wood from, anything, just ice and snow. So yeah, snow was the only thing they could turn to, but that's not all. They didn't just use any random snow. When you're trying to survive, all your moves have to be calculated and precise. The Inuit only used wind-packed snow that was dense enough to be cut into solid blocks. This air-trapped snow acted as a natural insulator. Gathering snow was one thing, turning it into a survival haven was another. The snow is cut into rectangular blocks and stacked in an upward spiral, everything coming together like you're trying to sort a puzzle. They didn't need nails or any form of glue for it. These guys were experts at putting this together and making a solid structure that couldn't withstand the intense wind. Now this is the fun part, and the part that truly speaks of survival. After the whole thing is completed, the final block to hold the whole structure together has been added above, which goes down to create a pretty interesting entrance. A small tunnel entrance is very close to the ground. Now this is the idea behind this interesting design. It traps here, keeps the cold air low, and leaves space above for warm air to stay trapped in. And to get the best out of the warm air floating above, they raise their sleeping platforms. The farther they are away from the ground, the higher their chances of not freezing to death. And you notice I didn't say bed, but sleeping platforms. It's because that is also made out of snow. And this isn't just raw snow. They had ways to turn the cold snow into cozy platforms. But we'd get into that in later parts of the video. But moving on, you see, the igloo wasn't just a shelter, but a very deliberate attempt at surviving the cold. While it gets as low as -90 degrees Fahrenheit outside, the trapped and floating warm air inside the igloo makes the dome up to 50 degrees Fahrenheit warmer. It's pretty funny when you think of it. If the entry and exit are very close to the floor, how would much needed warm air escape? And speaking of warm air, you're probably thinking, how do they manage to get warm air in the igloo? Now that leads us to their next survival trick. They made sure they cooked inside their homes and not out. While others enjoyed cooking and grilling outside, using things like coal or firewood outdoors, the Inuit figured that the opposite approach was more beneficial to them. Now, this is a pretty broad one, so I need you to listen closely. Of course, you already know trees don't thrive here. Charcoal? You can only dream of it, and when it comes to outdoor cooking, or at least before modern times, you need coals or firewood. But then there's another thing to consider. Cooking indoors isn't always safe. The fire gets out of hand, your roof gets burned, and the Inuit even have more to worry about. They lived in snow. Fire could literally melt it, and they'd be out in the open again. The Inuit recognized all these factors and luckily came up with an interesting fix. The kolik, or as many call it, the oil lamp. This is a stone lamp powered by animal blubber, most preferred seals. This lamp was the center of everything: light, heat, and of course, cooking. Now this is the thing. The kolik, because of its design, gave the Inuit the opportunity to have a very controlled flame. The wick, usually carved from moss, not only produces the right amount of flame, but can also be tuned. With this, it becomes safe to cook indoors. The Inuit realized cooking indoors brought in heat, that of course they needed to stay warm and alive inside the igloo. Every meal was an opportunity to warm the place up. They'd also gather around the kolik when a meal was being prepared, not because they were starving, but because they needed to stay warm. And get this, the cooking platforms are often situated close to where they sleep. You get the whole idea now. And aside from cooking, the kolik is generally a heating system. A single kolik can produce about the same energy as a 200-watt light bulb. And many times, a single igloo has multiple kolik running at the same time. With this, they are able to produce more warm air that the igloo and its brilliant design can trap. You also need to know the igloo was their only form of lighting. You can probably imagine how dark the inside of an igloo is. The entrance is close to the ground. There are no windows, and there is just a big dome above them. There are no bulbs around, no lanterns, no candles, just the kolik. No wonder this lamp is referred to as the Inuit's greatest invention: cooking, heating, and lighting. 3 in 1. And when it comes to food, preserving was one part of it. Their choice of food and how they are consumed is another. Right now, we eat almost anything we want, anyhow we want. It doesn't matter. But at -95 degrees Fahrenheit, your body deserves special attention. Every meal should serve a purpose. You see, your body is never at ease. It's always fighting to stay alive. If the meals you consume aren't exactly assisting that cause, it's only a matter of time before your body shuts down. The Inuit perfectly understood this, and they came up with a special eating system: eating for heat. In modern times, fat isn't ideal for consumption, but for the Inuit, it was a necessity. Whale fat, seal blubber, caribou marrow, these were not snacks or side meals. They were stable and necessary meals. And it gets more interesting when you find out how they were actually eaten. But before we get into the how, let's talk about the why. This fat provides way more energy per gram than usual carbohydrates or protein. For the Inuit, it was about what worked, not what looked or tasted good. And in the Arctic, where your body needs its temperature to be at a constant and stable level, that extra fuel fat becomes vital. Now for the how. Instead of boiling, cooking, frying, drying, or even fermenting, they consume these raw. Imagine having raw seal liver for dinner. Raw meat or fat was loaded with vital nutrients like vitamin C. When these get cooked, they get weakened. And this is a fact you probably don't know. A lot of early Arctic explorers died from scurvy, a disease caused by severe vitamin C deficiency. But the Inuit, on the other hand, they remained as fresh and healthy as they could be. And there is one obvious reason for this. The explorers didn't want anything to do with eating raw fats. The Inuits, they looked forward to it. Each bite of raw fat gives a crazy amount of vitamins and a powerful burst of energy that warms the body up from the inside and gives it energy to fight the cold. Every bite, every ounce of fat gave the body a little extra edge over the cold. Sometimes, just to really stay warmed up, they'd opt for weird soups like boiled blood and hot broth made from bones and skins. These were more like liquefied fats that they could drink like soup. These soups improved the core temperature and gave hunters extra strength to go on in the crazy snow for hours. They also served as warm and comfortable food that could be taken indoors to warm them up. You know, keeping the fingers from stiffening. Staying warm on the inside was one thing. Preventing the cold from getting into your body was another. And looking at the situation of things, the biggest threat. At negative 95 degrees, it only takes minutes for exposed skin to freeze up. Even in average cold temperatures, you don't want to step out with most parts of your skin exposed. Now, imagine what things were like for the Inuit then. There were no thick coats or sweaters. Remember, plants were not around, so cotton was a luxury. And not just that, a place as freezing as this meant that wind could cut through fabric, garments could freeze up, and you wouldn't be able to move in them. You'll just stand there like you're stuck in an iron armor. You're not strong enough to move. The Inuit, finding themselves in this region, had no choice but to find a solution, and they sure did. The solution came from the animals they hunted. Caribou hide was not seen as good, but as armor. It was lightweight, very warm, and breathable. You see, caribou hair is hollow and effectively traps hair inside it, making it a nice natural insulator. Then there's seal skin. It was also waterproof, and just like caribou hide, flexible. And the end products look like this: an inner layer that traps body heat, and an outer layer that can block wind, snow, and does not give in to water. The real beauty comes in making it. There were no sewing machines, metal needles, or modern threads to put it all together. The needles were made from animal bones, and the thread was from animal sinew. With these tools, they made parkas that were shaped to make sure the user stays warm around the chest and torso, with large hoods that did a great job at preventing frostbite and protecting the face. The sleeves were designed to trap heat and help mobility. Processed caribou hides and seal skin also play a role in completing the sleeping platforms in igloos. First, after raising the platform, all made out of snow by the way, they layer it with hides and skin. The hides retain the heat from the user's body, increasing their comfort. As the body releases heat, the snow melts, but instantly freezes up again, and this time takes a shape that favors the user. But there's more to this. It wasn't just about making ferments. They also made soft fur-lined boots called kamit. These boots were made from seal skin and had one major superpower: its water resistance. If you'll be constantly going on ice and going fishing or seal hunting, you'll need something to protect your legs. You can say water touching your skin isn't necessarily a bad thing, but you should understand that this isn't warm water. This is freezing. This is water that just slightly and recently melted. It still has ice in it. Your skin definitely shouldn't be making constant contact with this. Right now, we have all sorts of winter wear that has one purpose: to shield us from the cold. All sorts of fabrics are used, and all sorts of technology come into play. But centuries ago, the Inuit, with no technology, solved this issue and survived the coldest part of the earth just fine. This Inuit style still stands as one of the most effective ways of staying warm in the cold. I guess technology still has more catching up to do. The way the ancient Inuit garments flex, breathe, and trap body heat, and to crown it all up, are sustainable and renewable. It's simply genius. But if making armor out of animals isn't impressive enough, wait till you come across the tools they made out of basic things around them.
Toss it through the air, comes down on the seal, punctures the seal.
In a world where everything around you is frozen and empty, survival isn't about how strong you are, but how well you can make use of the little available to you. How skillful can you get? And if the Inuit culture can be explained in one word, it's skill. For people who had very little to work with, they invented an impressive number of tools and weapons. No factory, no plastic, no metal, just sinew, bone, ivory, stone, and a skillful Inuit. Take the harpoon, for instance. This hunting weapon wasn't just a sharpened stick, it had a complete mechanism. The harpoon is built with a detachable head and stays inside the animal after hitting it. A float is tied to the line, and this is where it gets interesting. The flow is made from seal skin, so when it hits a seal or whale and the animal tries to get away, it's not able to dive far. It's tethered. The harpoon is used mainly for animals that stay in water, but for land animals, the Inuit have other brilliant weapons. Bows made out of bones and driftwood are used for the caribou. They are strung very tightly with sinew, and for the arrows, their tips are often made out of carved ivory or very sharpened stones. Caribous have very thick hides, but the tips of the arrow are well designed to get the job done. The Inuit are also masters at setting traps for birds and foxes. Weapons aside, these people invented basic but very effective tools that are used back at home. The ulu knife is one of the most iconic. This knife is mainly used for butchering, shaping hides, and cutting food. Using a ulu to butcher animals like seals makes you work about 50% faster than you would if you used normal modern knives. Still from animal bones, the Inuit made scrapers. These were used to prepare clothing and hides. This one is rarely used for anything food-related, but for clothing? For building their homes, they had snow knives, chisels, and ice picks, all made from the same natural elements. And if you've made it this far, chances are you're just as fascinated by this culture as I am. So don't stop here. Click the video on your screen to watch these 7 genius Inuit survival tricks that still work today. It's a whole new level of survival. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to join our small Inuit family. Until next time, stay curious and stay warm.